We got a Buick something. I forgot the name of it. I'm gonna I'm gonna do a voiceover anyway.
And of course, this video is brought to you by Aeroparts.com, high quality aftermarket parts and genuine OE brands. In this video, I'm going to be replacing the water pump in a 2015 Buick Encore and showing you how I found the multiple leaks. It was not just leaking at the water pump, but it was leaking elsewhere. This guide is also going to be useful for other GM vehicles that use the 1.4 liter Ecotec motor. I will be including links in the description so you can easily navigate your way through the video, but I recommend not skipping the beginning because I'm going to be including important information such as this. The water pump has 3 different bolt sizes, for example, so I'm going to be highlighting the different bolts and where they go. I'm just going to leave this with you in the beginning just to help you out and you know where to find it. But I will be going over this in detail later on in the video. I will also be including a picture of the belt drive. I usually recommend taking a picture of it, but here's a cheat sheet basically. If you forgot to do it, this will help you get it back on. And lastly, I apologize in advance for a flashlight that I was using that just sucked. It made the quality of the screen look awful. It's not your device or the video quality, it's the flashlight I was using. Don't worry, you'll never see that again because it actually got stolen, fortunately, while I was camping. Let's get right into this video.
Yeah, we got the coolant system pressurized here. I got the pressure tester on it. 14 psi.
So my friend reached out to me and said, hey, the Buick is leaking coolant. I've been adding coolant every here and there, and I've been very busy with work. I want to see if you wanted to take a shot at it. So as I put my cooling pressure tester on, I put about 14 psi in the cooling system and found a leak coming near the thermostat housing. It was next to the turbo intake. The only way to verify where the leak was coming from for sure was to remove the intake and get a much better look at it. It's real simple. You remove the mass airflow sensor. It's got that locking connector on it. You pull back and you just unscrew the hose clamps and remove that hose going to the turbocharger. I'm also going to remove the air box as well. It comes off real easy. Just remove any wiring attached to it. Now there's a much better view here, a whole lot more room. And I was able to actually see where it was leaking from, which is right there where that arrow is pointing. And that leak was coming from the thermostat housing, which is a pretty common problem. You'll see that leak again. Now I move the camera to the top of the thermostat housing and you can actually see where that leak is coming from. Right when I wipe it, more coolant starts to come down. So we have an issue. Now I was thinking of just replacing the gasket for the thermostat housing, and I decided that it really isn't that much more effort to replace the water pump, and the car had about 80,000 miles on it, and that's about the time that you start to replace water pumps. Now for this job, I ended up replacing the water pump and the thermostat housing gasket. I didn't replace the thermostat. Now the thermostat and the housing are one piece, by the way. It's an electric thermostat and they can fail. And typically when you replace a water pump, you replace the thermostat while you're down there. However, the parts for this car were purchased locally at a nice premium, and I decided not to replace what wasn't broken. If the thermostat fails later on down the road, it's right up front and not very hard to change. You don't have to take everything apart again. I will be supporting the engine with a jack and a block of wood on the oil pan. As always, make sure the block of wood has a large surface. I'm going to cover as much of the oil pan surface as possible so you don't puncture it or bend it. Once the engine mount is out, I have to remove the engine mount bracket. It's held on by 3 15mm bolts, and you will have to raise and lower the engine to reach and remove some of the bolts. Now here's where I noticed that there was coolant leaking from where the water pump was located as well. So this car had multiple leaks going on. The tensioner uses a 14mm E-Torx socket. You just put some pressure down on the tensioner and you can loosen up the belt. Here's a picture of the belt when you put it back on so you know exactly how it goes. I typically recommend taking a picture of the belt, but you can use the video too as a cheat sheet. Now I actually removed the water pump pulley bolts after removing the serpentine belt, but it's actually easier to remove those bolts before removing the serpentine belt because there's a whole lot more resistance while the belt is on compared to while the belt is off. This coolant hose needs to be removed.
One of these, you don't break anything.
Now I'm going to be removing the water pump bolts. There are 10 bolts in total. They are all 12mm E-Torx, and there are 3 different lengths. I went over this in the beginning of the video in detail, and I'm going to go over it as well later on in the video, so don't worry about it. If you missed it, don't worry about that. You can go back to the beginning of the video, or you can skip forward, and I included that in the description as well, so you can kind of navigate your way through the video pretty easily.
And a hammer. Come on. Okay. All right.
Now once the water pump came off, you have to clean all of it thoroughly. You can use a razor blade, but a Brillo pad actually worked a lot better in this specific situation here. Here's some more close-up shots here. Once you're scraping that gasket off, make sure you don't get too much of that stuff in your cooling system. That's probably not enough to cause any serious issues, but you just don't want any of that stuff floating around in your cooling system. Now I'm going to replace the gasket where it was originally leaking on the thermostat housing. Remember, this is a thermostat and housing one piece. It's plastic. Sometimes they tend to crack. I'm a big fan of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this particular thermostat is not one of those quote-unquote change it while you're in there because it's right up front. It's real easy to change without having to remove any of the other stuff if this one fails on its own. I'm also adding Permatex water pump RTV gasket maker to the thermostat gasket as well because these were just not really that good of a design. Just don't go too crazy with the RTV so you don't get that stuff into the thermostat and clog up the thermostat with the RTV. And of course, because the thermostat housing is plastic, I'm going to tighten it by hand.
Okay, so we have the new water pump here, and we have 3 different size bolts. There's not very many articles or videos online that clearly show which bolt goes where, and that's the biggest part of this video. The rest of the job is kind of straightforward, except for this. This one can be confusing. So here's the deal. There's A, B, and C. There's 2 of the longest bolts. As you can see, they're not the same length here. So these 2 bolts, 1 and 2, you see where that is? These 3, 1, 2, left side over here, 3, and then the 5 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The rest of the 5 go in. And so as you can see, A, B, and C.
Now I know this is very much so needed, so of course I have still shots of where the bolts go, and if you need to come back to the video, you can go into the description and you can find this part of the video specifically. Now this is an aftermarket pump from the local parts store. I would have rather wanted to use the original pump gasket, but I don't have that one here, so I ended up coating this gasket on both sides with this water pump RTV. It's not necessary, but I did it for good measure. Now of course you can start reassembling everything. I don't include every single detail with the reassembly, but I do include things that I feel are very important, such as the water pump bolt torque, bleeding the coolant, which I will be getting to very shortly. And here's a close-up shot of those 12mm water pump bolts going on. They call for 71 inch pounds. The 2 torque to yield bolts call for 71 inch-pounds as well, plus an additional 30-degree turn. Now this rubber hose is back on. This car was in really good condition. If it's cracked, damaged, or too squishy, make sure to replace that one. There's also a coolant hose underneath the thermostat housing that you will have to reattach. Needle nose pliers are necessary for this. I'm going to use a metal fastener to secure the coolant fitting. And the water pump pulley goes back on. It's easier to tighten the water pump pulley while the serpentine belt is on, so you have some resistance. If there is any coolant on the pulleys, make sure to dry them off before putting the belt back on.
Push down. That's the tension.
Now once the serpentine belt is on and secure, you can start tightening up the water pump pulley bolts. When installing the engine mount bracket, it's pretty straightforward. Just remember that you will need to raise and lower the engine at your discretion. Sometimes you need to raise it, sometimes you need to lower it. Can't tell you exactly when to do it. I'm just going to use some of your discretion on that one. That's all you need to do to get these bolts back on. And of course, remember this airbox has no bolts holding it down. It just pops back in via the mounting points. And once everything is connected, just check everything to make sure it's all tight and everything is plugged in. Now it's time to add coolant and start the bleeding process. I'm using concentrate here, so I have to mix it 50-50 with distilled water. If you get a 50-50 premix already, you don't got to worry about that step.
Well, I always like to start the car at the plug-in. Let's see. First startup, very nice. That's a powerful fan. I'm gonna let her warm up a little bit.
Now if you'll notice here, the fan is going to run constantly because the ECU detects low coolant. I let the car warm up a little bit and then turn it off and then restart it so the fan doesn't consistently run. Once there's enough coolant in there, you can get the car to actually warm up without the fan running and impeding that. Once the vehicle is warmed up, you're going to want to open that bleeder screw. In this case, it wasn't warm enough, but this bleeder screw is located on the left hand side or driver's side of the radiator. If If you have like a Chevy Cruze or another type of vehicle, I know some of them are located on the opposite end, the passenger side, but just keep that in note.
Screw down here. It takes forever to warm up or to get hot. Oh, there we go. Yeah. There's some bubbles. I think it's pretty steady. There we go. Try to squeeze all the air bubbles out. Still air.
Now obviously you're going to want a drain pan underneath this area so you don't get coolant all over the place, and you're just going to do this until you no longer hear air coming out. Once you're done, you're going to close it up, top it off with coolant, and take your car for a test drive. If this video helped you out, make sure to hit the like button because that helps me out. If you want to see more content on this specific car, oh, there's going to be more, and it's going to be very soon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget, if you're looking for high quality aftermarket parts or genuine OE brands, make sure to check out aeroparts.com.